So we wanted to do a bit of a bonus track, I think, because when we had a conversation previously, Mark Graham and I, and we were talking about our journey in property and house network and everything, we touched on it, but we didn't go into too much detail around the mental health side of things. So we thought we'd do a bonus episode here where we just go into that in a little bit more detail. So I appreciate both you, Graham and Mark, for opening up like this because I'm sure it's not an easy thing to do, but I think it will help a lot of people. So, Graham, perhaps we can start with you. You touched on what it was like for you and when you had to make the decision to leave the business that you'd poured your heart and soul into for 15 years, and that's no easy thing, no easy decision to make. And
Mm.
you mentioned at the time about obviously, your mental health wasn't in a great place. So could you go into that in a
Yeah.
little bit more detail for us, how you were feeling at that time?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I look at how old I was then, I think I was about to turn 40, or I just turned 40 from memory. I think it was around that sort of time.
Mm,
And so obviously up to the age of 40, you go through lots of different things in life, and lots of different roller coasters of emotions and, uh, breakups and the funerals and weddings and births, deaths, everything really. By that age, most people have experienced some kind of real down,
yeah,
but and real highs. And then you get you get a bit of a handle on how things make you feel, what you can cope with at that age,
yeah,
and what point it gets to where you go, I don't like the way this is making me feel, because it's almost a new emotion at that stage in your life. It's quite scary
yeah,
because you think you've felt it all before.
yeah,
That's the only way I can describe it, is that I thought I knew my limits, and I thought I knew that I can control my emotions no matter what hit me or what, because I've been through a lot to that point.
yeah.
Um, and then you sort of these new things. So it's like that film, is that cartoon that my kids like, Inside Out, that where you've got all these sort of characters in your head.
Yeah,
And I don't know why I thought that, but it's like the character, some sort of emotional character, screaming at you like, stop,
yeah,
you've got to stop, like a real signal. And that kind of built up towards me leaving. And I think, yeah, to experience those sort of emotions of, as I said before, wanting to shut the world out. I used to look forward to going to bed so much. It was
mm,
like, because it was the only time I got peace. It
yeah,
was the only time my mind would stop. It was the only time I didn't have to worry, because I
mm,
was worrying for every second I was not asleep.
yeah,
And that feeling, I don't know what that's done to me. I still don't know what the effects are, but it's that feeling in your stomach when your stomach turns. When you first get a worry and your stomach flips,
yeah,
it's doing that every minute that I'm awake. My stomach's flipping around, and so I don't know what that's doing to me, but
yeah,
it's creating this, like, just a massive build up of fear and worry, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, whatever that thing was building inside me to such a point I couldn't switch it off unless I was asleep. So it got to the point where I was telling myself, if you just stay asleep, it's better.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the sort of early stages of me going, what the hell is that?
mm,
Like, I love life. I'm a fun. I think I can be fun. I used to be. As you know, I'm always a glass half full kind of person that
yeah,
likes to have fun, likes to muck about, doesn't take life too seriously. But it all just disappeared from me
mm,
in those final sort of months. I was, Sarah and the kids would say the same thing.
mm,
I just became an impersonator of myself, and not a very good one. Is the
mm,
best way that I was trying to pretend to be happy. I was pretending, but it wasn't okay. It wasn't all right. And so, yeah, that's a weird way of sort of putting how I felt, um, leading up to that point where I had no choice but to walk away from the business that I started with Mark,
mm,
and it's the only income that I had. It was the only I put everything into it. There was nothing for me. There was nothing. There's no other offer.
So did
It
that
got
kind
to
of
that point
kick?
where I had to just stop for my own mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, and did that kind of then kick off sort of almost a whole nother sort of group of feelings of fear as well? Because obviously you had no choice but to walk away clearly because of how you were feeling. But equally, now what's next? What else am I going to do? How am I going to earn a living and support the family? Or was it a case of, oh, thank God I'm out of that and now I'm starting to feel more me again?
Yeah, it was instant relief,
Right.
instant relief. Because as I say, I think I don't know. I get the feeling that people that when it gets too much for people and they take an action, let's say that they can't come back from, um, it's my opinion that a switch must flick
Yeah.
to execute something like that. A switch, an extra switch that I don't know exists yet. Well, none of
Yeah.
us on this call know exists, but there's something that must go bang, ping, done. Um, so I felt before that ever got close to being flicked, anything would be better.
Yeah.
And that took me right away from that danger point where I think maybe I was heading. It just took me right back. I was like, just complete relief. Like anything but this is where I was at. And because I still hadn't got to that point, or that switch hadn't flicked, thank God. It still meant I was still me, and I was still ambitious, and I was still hungry, and I was still had just about enough confidence in myself because that had been wiped from me pretty
Yeah.
much. I still had a little bit of confidence left to go. Don't worry, you can use this. You can use these learnings, and you can still make a good life for yourself. It's not
Mm.
finished. You're only 40. Life begins
Mm.
at 40 and all that. So yeah, I just it was just pure relief, and at that point, I didn't care. I was ready to start again from the bottom, and that felt a million times more better for me
Yeah.
than continuing where I was. Even if I lost everything, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that I touched on this a little bit, but I think it was fortunate in a way because of me and Graham's relationship over such a long period of time. Like I knew what he was thinking and he knew what I was thinking. We said this on the podcast that we obviously we did earlier. And you get to a stage where I knew it was serious enough. So, like there was no, I'd pushed and pushed to try and keep Graham to stay for quite a considerable time, and I just knew that it just was the best thing for him, even though it was by far the worst thing for me,
Hmm.
if you like. It was just really apparent, and to be honest with you, I could see it because I remember him, which is the worst feeling of coming to collect his stuff, which is just like so bizarre. I never thought in a million years that would ever happen. And then yeah, we come and got his stuff, and then it was a bit like, well, I kind of like see you later type of moment. It was totally bizarre, but he was a different person even when he came to get his stuff.
Yeah.
Like I could see it in him. Like it was so clear. In honesty, I think it had moved from him to me. I think he'd
Mm.
passed the baton over. And then yeah, and then all the things started to develop for me, I suppose. But I could see it in him. So yeah, it was a very strange moment, and yeah, something I haven't really thought about too deeply since that actually. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, I can imagine both of you probably buried it quite deep and just moved on, as we all do, don't we? Stiff upper lip and all that. Let's just carry on, move forward. It never happened, sort of thing. But actually, it
yeah,
is really, really important to talk about these things because, you know, what you're describing, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now that can go, I've been there. And I
Mm,
know when that moment was, or some people may even be feeling it right now. And to know that
mm,
obviously it's okay to make those decisions and make change. In fact, that's exactly what you should do to protect
mm.
yourself. So how long would you say it was, Mark, from when Graham left to when you had that moment, that same moment?
I think mine was a slightly different moment, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just trying to think, Graham. It was November 16, wasn't it, that you left?
Uh,
Pretty sure.
yes, I think it was. Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure it was.
yeah.
And yeah, like there was far too much to say in the middle of when that happened. I think it was a real build up. I mean, the crazy thing is that people didn't know the story. They might have thought me and Graham had a massive fallout. I mean, it could be anything from the truth. Like, we were still speaking on a day by day basis, really. I mean, the difficult thing for me was I didn't want to kind of share and overload him with too much info, because I would imagine that what Graham was experiencing as well was going through grief, because he'd given up something that was deep within him. So I felt that, I didn't want to overload him with, well, this happened today and this happened today, and I can't believe this happened. It was like, because he'd be still back with me. So we had to detach away from it. Or I felt I needed to, for him. So it was very difficult for me, because like me and Graham literally would be like, I don't know how many hours a day on average we would speak about the business. It was considerable. Like, early mornings, during the day, in the evenings, whatever. It was, yeah. I mean, what Graham was really good at, actually, he would literally switch his phone off or whatever. So I knew if I tried to call Graham after, like, I don't know, 8, 9 o'clock, after we'd been going quite a while, you couldn't get through to him. He was excellent at that. I'm sorry, that just pinged in my head. But yeah, so I think it was in November 16. It was a slow build up. There was stuff going on behind the scenes, and obviously I'd made a decision to commit to the business, to give it the best. But you don't know the dynamic shift of something until it actually happens. And now, when I look back now, and obviously when the business actually finished up ending, I had to look myself in the mirror, obviously. I do go back to that moment in March. It was March 18, actually. So it was a little bit after. And it was just I think what it was, and I do this, right? So I can take quite a lot. I've got a very high barrier before I crack. The problem is, when I crack, I tend to explode, or certainly did back then. I think I've learned an incredible amount since then. So that hasn't really happened to me now. You'll know this, Claire, I'm quite considered. I don't overreact now, but that's for me learning from going through stuff like this. So yeah, I got to a stage where I felt very under pressure inside the business, very under pressure. Graham will know what that pressure was like. And normally we would be chatting that through. We would be discussing it. If I was having a bad day, he'd pick me up. If I was, be round the other way, right? So we always had that, and I didn't. And the pressure was building. I won't go into it. And there was one call, and it wasn't a great call. It really wasn't, but it probably wasn't the worst I've been on. And I just went past that line. And Graham said there, internally, the switch was flicked, and I just absolutely went. So instead of being, saying, enough's enough, I just exploded. And I didn't explode in terms of shouting and screaming. I just melted. I mean, like, the only way I can describe it. And I think it was probably an incredibly good thing for me. I think maybe I'm lucky in that sense, maybe slightly different, because we've all got different characters. But I literally broke down to the sense of, I can literally see what happened to me as soon as the switch went. I put the phone down. I have a headset like this on, and I didn't throw them. I just put them down, and I just looked down at the floor. And then just emotion basically took over, to the sense of I could not stop crying. I mean, there wasn't a feeling, a build up. It was just a massive switch in a split second, and I just went. And I had people coming in to ask me questions, because they've always used to. And these people were coming in, and I could not speak. It was that bad, and it went on. I mean, you think, like, how long to cry is a really horrible thing to do, right? Well, it depends on what you're crying for. It could be good stuff, right? But when it's bad stuff, you don't want to be, don't want to be crying for a long time. A minute's quite a long time to cry. Honestly, I was in the room uncontrollable for at least half an hour.
Best thing you could have done, probably.
It must have been half an hour. So much so that I was having people coming and saying, like, they were really worried about me and everything else. I just couldn't stop. And the next, I don't know how long it was. I say half an hour, maybe it wasn't, but it absolutely felt like it. And then I didn't ask, I didn't tell anyone because I couldn't speak. The next thing that I remember is Gran coming through the door. Out of nowhere, I was just like, well, "What are you doing here?" And then I could speak. It was as soon as he came in, I could speak again. It was absolutely weird. And then I just was slowly. I don't even remember Gran whether we even remember it, but yeah. And then I began to speak a little bit, and then he got me out of there. I left. I mean, I was on that moment. I was quitting at that moment.
Did you?
I picked the computer. We picked the computer up and everything. I was gone.
And did you actually go? You didn't,
No,
did you?
no, I didn't go. I should have gone. I should have probably gone at that moment, but I didn't. But I will say this, probably a little bit like what Graham just said there. The relief of it getting it out was. I mean, by the time I'd got home, I felt much better. I actually had the very next day, we had an incredibly important meeting, like really important investment meeting. And I remember speaking to Graham, and Graham said, "There's no way you're going to that. You know, you need time. You need time. You can't just go back." I was like, I was always even thinking then, am I quitting or am I going back? Am I going to do that meeting? It was coming. I was like 2 or 3 days away from my birthday as well, because I remember that clearly. And I didn't go. And I just said to everyone, I just went on WhatsApp on the main group, and I just said, "Look, I'm out for a period of time here. I don't know how long this is going to last for, whether I'm even coming back, but you're not going to hear from me. Deal with it. You know, you can. I'll speak to you when I speak to you," type of thing. And I made the decision to take a complete break after that moment. And a bit like Graham, the relief I felt was just, it was just immense. It was just like, yeah, I just like, you know, you feel relief, but really exaggerated. Like, I felt really good. I felt really good, but also very worried. Well, what am I going to do? Like, this is my baby. It's just like literally it's my fourth child. I always felt that way, and I can't walk away from my fourth child. That's how I was. I couldn't. I found it very, very difficult, because I was never probably as bad as Graham in that sense. I just exploded, but it wasn't. I wasn't thinking I don't want to wake up in the morning. I never felt that way.
I think probably for you as well, there was an additional pressure because I was there and it was my livelihood for the girls as well. So you must have been feeling that pressure that if I go, what about Claire? Rather than it just being, well, not just me. I know that obviously you cared about all the staff, but obviously you knew that it was my livelihood too to look after the kids. So you probably didn't want to stop until you tried everything. So that must have brought its own pressures, which I can fully appreciate and accept that must have been very difficult. Do you remember those days, Graham? Do you remember walking through the door and dragging him out?
Yeah, I do. I can't remember who called me. My guess it was either you, Claire, Hannah.
I think it was Hannah.
I think it
or
was
Ian
Hannah.
Marston, or Ian. Can't remember,
Hannah.
because they're the only ones that would have called me.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was happening because I was busy looking after the team and I hadn't gone in that room. I wasn't one of the people going in asking questions.
It was just that sort of call. Someone needs help. So it didn't matter who made the call. I don't remember. I just remember hearing that Mark's in trouble, and so I just jumped straight in the car. I knew where he'd be. It was a very quick phone call because I had to go help him. So luckily I live quite close. I was sort of 10 minutes away probably. And then I remember walking through the office, and it felt like it was slow motion, because it felt like everyone was looking at me going, what's he doing here? He's gone, isn't he? And at the same time, I couldn't be friendly because of the seriousness of what was happening. I wasn't my normal self. So it was very weird to walk back through the office. And it felt like slow motion, that walk, long walk, but it wasn't, but it did feel like it. And then, maybe getting to Mark and seeing that he's got to a point where he needs to get out of there regardless, just go home. But my advice to him at that point was just leave, like I did. Just just do what you need. You can't carry on like this. And again, it's that fear of that switch flicking where you go too far. Luckily, sort of, I think with mental health, I think it's sometimes it could be one thing that triggers it, just one event out of the blue, and it triggers that switch. Mine and Mark's, I think, was the same. It was a build up of things, whereas Mark's, you could take a lot. Like a boxer, you can go a certain number of rounds, and then you go, oh, can't get back up, can't go back out for another round. I think Mark went through a couple more rounds, but you could see it was getting beaten, and so I just wanted to get him out of the fight as quickly as I could and let him make that decision. He wants to go back in or stay out like I'd done. But yeah, and obviously he felt he had a few more rounds in him.
I got knocked Sparko only about 9 or 10 months after I've flattened the count. Not even for 10, I probably didn't get up for about 20 minutes.
So you say that though, Mark, but when you were out for the count, if you like, it's a good analogy, I suppose. But when you were out for the count, I remember thinking, oh my God, like, how long is it going to be before we get Mark back? Because that's the only thing you think about as a loved one is he's not okay, and how long's it going to be until he's okay? But actually, it was a case of once it was done, it was done. There was that grieving process that didn't last very long, really. And then straight away, you were back in the game. You were obviously in demand. People wanted to talk to you about different opportunities and things. So it wasn't very long before you were back out there going, right, what's next for us, and mapping out all these different ideas on the wall again.
Well, yeah, but I suppose, again, from my side here, the one thing I want to make probably clear on this podcast is that I think that the reason I was able to do that was, and I think Graham would agree, Graham did it in a different way. He didn't quite do the embarrassment in front of his old staff by breaking down and crying for half an hour with everyone knowing it, by the way, because everyone did, because obviously things spread for the company very quickly. The reason I was able to, before it actually, the actual, I suppose, like the big red button actually happened, I'm pretty sure it was on Tuesday or Wednesday evening. I knew the weekend before, but I knew, and I was breaking down during that weekend, but not in a Mark's in trouble type of way, but just Mark needs to. I was grieving, basically. I was grieving before the death of the business, and I got it out, like again in front of the kids and stuff. I suppose what happened is I learned that actually to ask for help, to talk about it, or to emotionally cry, that was my release. That it was emotional. It was something that we started as a dream, two guys having a chat, and then straddling a fridge in a single garage to getting it to where it got to, which was at one point worth £35 million. So it was an extraordinary time, an extraordinary story. It's so much happened. I still genuinely believe we could actually probably write a book over stuff. Yeah, you just go through so many emotions. So at the end of it, why wouldn't you break down? I mean, oh, I'm a man, I can't cry. It's like, yeah, I'm all right with that now. And I did it in front of the kids, and the kids saw me, and the kids saw. I could look at it and gone, oh, the kids could have seen me crying and see the weakness, or I could turn around and say the kids saw me crying and getting it out, which was the main thing and the best thing for me, and therefore it made me stronger as a man. It depends on your outlook, and I think that I learned for me to get emotional was important, and I shouldn't be afraid of it. So that was my talking, I suppose.
Just on that subject, Mark, not to interrupt you there, but I've watched a piece with Ryan Reynolds and oh God, the guy that plays Wolverine. What's his name?
Hugh Jackman.
That's it. Sorry, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, and they were talking about anxiety. And apparently Ryan Reynolds suffers terribly with anxiety. And he was talking about how he discusses that with his kids. And Hugh Jackman was saying, I'm really surprised, because usually we want to shield our kids and we want them to know that we're fine, we're strong, like, we're, absolutely invincible. But Ryan Reynolds said it's the opposite. He said, because if all my children ever see is me winning all the time, they're going to feel inferior when some things don't go quite according to plan for them in their own lives. They have to see that you lose more than you win, right? And so by you doing that, Mark, one, you're teaching your sons how important it is to actually be in touch with your emotions, and there's nothing wrong with crying, by the way. But secondly, what you're showing them is I don't always win. Not everything is roses, but I get back up again and I go again. And
I
that's a
think that
really
was
important message.
I think that was the key, and I didn't know at the time, but pretty much it's like anything. Whenever you cry, it's a bit like if you're ill and you're sick, you hate being sick, but then
Mm.
you genuinely feel better pretty quickly straight after.
Mhm.
And crying was that for me as well. I always felt a little bit better, and the next time I cried, which happened on that weekend about 20 times, but each time I cried, it wasn't quite as painful.
Mm.
So it was helping me recover quite quickly. So that 20 times of crying, by the time it was the 20th, I was just like, I was crying and just thinking, what's next?
Yeah.
Rather than, so the grieving process, I got it out quite quick. So when it actually went wrong, I remember thinking when I walk out and I get in my car and drive back, this is it. And I literally turn the lights off because I
Mm.
did.
Mm.
And I thought that would crush me, but it didn't crush me at all. What it did do is go, okay, what next? And I remember being on the phone call the very next day, and normally you'd think like I'd be an emotional wreck. And I spoke to Graham, and Graham actually said to me, "I've got a meeting scheduled. Do you want to come along?" I was just like, "No, I don't really want to come along." And that, funny enough, was with Keller Williams.
Mm.
So that was like within 24 hours. My brain was already kind of coming back already that quick, but that's only because that 20 cries could have taken me 20 days,
Mm. Mm.
but it
You got
didn't
it
because
all out.
I got it all out.
Yeah, well, I remember it as well. I mean, I remember saying like when I walked out with you and said, the lights were switched off and that was that. I remember actually voicing, right, I'm going to take off at least a couple of weeks here, get my head together, because obviously it was emotional for me too. Like I was involved in that journey with you the entire time. I might not have built it from scratch like the two of you, but it was part of my life, my family's life. It was everything to us as well. So it was very emotional. And I remember thinking I just need to take a couple of weeks out and just get my head on straight again and then decide what's next. And then I remember about 48 hours later, you saying, "Do you want to come over and we'll just map out some ideas on the wall?" And I was like, I think that 2 weeks didn't last very long, did it? But I guess that's the type of people that we are. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a really important thing to talk about because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been through similar, and perhaps don't voice it enough and um, want everybody to feel as though you know we're invincible,
I
but
think I think
nobody
the
is.
point is that everyone have a different release,
Mm.
right? Everyone, but you need that release. Otherwise, that's when I think it becomes really dangerous when that's staying inside and you're not either talking about it or releasing it out.
Mm.
It's becoming more dangerous if you keep that within. So having that person that you feel that you can talk to that's, I suppose, we're the lucky ones.
Yeah, and who you surround yourself with really does matter because if you've got family and friends and people that
Yeah.
care about you, that see that in you and support you through it, then you can usually bounce back a lot quicker, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I think that was great. Anything else you guys want to share, or anything you think is important to add?
Yeah, I think it's just mental health in general. Obviously, isn't always related to business failures. It's just life, right? It's just
Yeah.
like no matter what you do, and I think sometimes we forget that people are human.
Mm.
And I blame myself for that sometimes because we employed a lot of people in the business when we had it, and you just expect them to produce all the time, and you forget they've got wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, families, children,
Yeah.
and there's so much going on in people's lives, but you expect them to open that door to the office and be brilliant and perfect every day.
Yeah.
But the fact is, for the majority, it's actually a fight
Hmm.
to just get through that door. They don't want to be there. Their minds are all over the place. So I think it's brilliant that we can talk about it, and I think it's brilliant when you look at some of the bigger companies out there, the corporately responsible companies like your Apples and your Googles have dedicated people now. I think that you can go somewhere in some of the bigger companies now if you don't feel quite right. And I think you can always relate your performance to how you're feeling generally.
Oh, yeah, mindset's everything. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm feeling on top of the world, I know my output's going to be incredible. If I'm feeling crappy, my output's going to be, and it's accepting that you can't always be at 100, 9-second 100-meter runner. Sometimes you're going to do it in 10 seconds. Sometimes you're going to do it in 11 seconds. You can't always do it. But you've got to take your days when you can and absolutely maximize the hell out of it. That's what I found is when I'm having a good day, I can get so much done.
Yeah.
And I won't even feel tired. It's weird. But when I'm having a heavy day, I could lay down and sleep and my mind's heavy and everything feels difficult.
Yeah.
So I think that, just a takeaway for anyone watching really that feels like it's a struggle just to get up and get into work mode. You're not the only person. I think that's pretty normal for anyone, particularly with young families and responsibilities where they're looking after other people. It's not unusual to feel like that, but you will find those good days when you can really maximize the output. And I think it's important just to recognize when you're having a bad one, but also for your employer or your boss or whoever, your family, to recognize when you're having a bad one and to voice it. Because I'm sure me and Mark would have got more out of our teams had they come in the mornings and said what was wrong. We probably would have sent them home and gone, you shouldn't even be here. And I think occasionally we did that, Mark. I think sometimes people would say, look, I've just gone for a really messy breakup, I think was one of them, or something, or miscarriages, or, real heavy, like, go home. What are you even bloody doing here?
We had a number of those. We had a number of those, Graham. I remember one person, I won't go into names, but one person that was going through a really, really, really tough time. And I think in the end they said, look, I'm going to need 2-3 weeks off. We said, just take them. In the end, I think it lasted for about 5-6 weeks. A lot of businesses would have probably let that person go, particularly back then. But like, I completely agree. I mean, even now, I mean, everyone's different, aren't they? In terms of the way they are, and sometimes we don't even. I think the hard thing is sometimes we don't even know why we feel the way we feel, right? Because everything could be going quite well, and then you just get derailed by just a thought or a feeling that hits you, and you just think, why am I feeling? And then you get, I've been frustrated. I was thinking, well, why do I feel like that? Even now, like sometimes. Maybe twice a week. Sometimes I'm like, it's really difficult for me to actually get up and start work. When I do, I'm absolutely fine. But I have this really weird feeling sometimes. I'm just like, oh, what's the day like going to be like today? Do you know what I mean? I can't even describe it. It's a terrible way because I'm not helping. But so like, I feel like that even today. So we all go through it. I think the great thing is that more and more people are prepared to talk about it. Which is amazing.
Yeah, we'll try going through menopause as well. I'm just saying.
No, I
That's
can't
a whole nother
imagine.
subject for another podcast. Trust me, that is not fun at all. But I think honestly, guys, thank you. Really, thank you, because I know it probably hasn't been easy to talk about, something you probably never thought you would ever talk about publicly. But that's going to help a hell of a lot of people. So feel good about that. And thank you very much. And I'm proud of you both, and I love you both.
Same to you. No problem at all.
Super. Thanks very much.
See you later.
Thanks, Claire.
Bye.